Hey, everybody. Welcome to Sheepdog Response. My name is Matt Smith. I'm the director here at Sheepdog Response. I want to thank you for taking the time to come out and get this brief. We try to put this class on as a community outreach because I know how important the information that Jeff and the folks at Skull Games is putting out is for parents, for people in the community, and heck, just for Americans. It's amazing information. I promise you're both going to be shocked and happy that you came to this brief. It's my pleasure to put this on for you. I want to welcome you here. A little quick note, because we are live streaming, so we're live streaming out across YouTube. So at no time throw anything at Jeff unless you hit him. No. So do me a solid if you've got to get up and use the restroom. Just kind of keep it low so the cameras can still make contact. As long as it's not obtrusive, that's fine. If you have to take a call. The babysitters have been told we offered sitting because I want to maximize the number of people that got here. If they have any issue, they have your names. They'll just duck in and let you know if there's some problem. Otherwise, the kids seem to be having a great time in there. But it's going to be an incredibly informative brief. I want to thank you for coming and just kind of let you know last minute thing. If you haven't been told, the bathrooms, if you have to get up and use the bathrooms, or if you go around here and along the wall to the back wall of the building, the bathrooms are along the back there. There's plenty of coffee. As long as you keep drinking it, we'll keep making it. So if you want coffee, it's complimentary. You're welcome to help yourself to any of the Black Rifle coffee. There's water fountains and a bottle filler back there. And just please ask questions, get involved, because the folks at Skull Games, they're an amazing organization. Everything they do off the generosity of the people that come out. But they give back tenfold by doing amazing briefs and working to stop human trafficking and kind of get you informed about how you can get involved and the signs that you can watch out for as parents or as people, as just concerned citizens. So thanks for joining us. No further ado, I'm going to turn it over to the man, the myth, the legend. Yeah, Jeff. Thanks.
Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. Special thanks to Sheepdog Response, Matt and Carl and Yako, and of course Tim, who couldn't be here today. I think like Matt said, this is some heavy topic that we're going to talk about, but we just believe in having fun wherever you are. We're all combat vets, and even in combat, you got to have fun, right? So we're going to tackle this in a fun manner, and we're going to have a bunch of practical exercises that we're going to work through as well. So in a perfect world, you're going to get quick intros from us. I'm going to talk a little bit about the scale and scope and the mission and vision of Skull Games, and then we're going to jump right into what is trafficking and trying to eliminate some of those myths and things that you think it is. This crime is bad enough, but how we have demonstrated what it is artificially in the United States makes it even doubly hard to work through. And then really the bulk of where we're going to be at, our special guests right here, are survivor hunters with Skull Games. So both of these women have come through the life. You're going to hear their stories. And again, they're going to share as much as they want or don't want, okay? Feel free to come up to them afterwards. Obviously, respect. We got one crier. One cries the other. So again, don't misunderstand the tears as you need to back off. Ask the questions. They're here to volunteer and talk about it. I think it's really an honor for me to have the survivor hunters here, because you know this exists out there, but you haven't met these people that have lived through it. Now they're back on the other side, and they're incredibly powerful and strong and capable women. We don't call them survivors for nothing. They've survived the most horrific things I can imagine. And then one of the very things that we're proud of with Skull Games is we're able to bring them into our team and they become hunters for us. You'll hear a little bit more about them. They both have their own expertise to bring in, especially in the cities that they hunt. So I'll talk more about that in detail. But again, once Candace and Jess start telling their story, that might be the end of it. We're going to run out of time long before we're able to go through anything we want to get through. We do have slides, but it's really just placeholders for us to emphasize and give you a visual of what it is we're talking about. So if you have some questions, just raise your hand. And again, contrary to what people do say, there are stupid questions, of course, and there are stupid people. And we probably, just statistically, we have stupid questions in this room and stupid people, and that's fine. And so just, you're in good hands. Statistically, one of the four of us is a stupid person with a stupid question too. So, recognize you're in good company, right? Okay. So I'm going to start off with a quick intro. My name is Jeff Tiegs. I'm retired military. I was in special operations from 1987 to 92, breaking service, came back in 97 and got out in 2015 with about 26 years of service, all in special operations. Why does that matter? Because what I learned in manhunting, what I learned in counterterrorism, what I learned in counterinsurgencies are the things that I've taken and we've created Skull Games. And when you think of Ranger, Special Forces, Delta Forces, what I was in, when you think of that person, you think of the assaulter, right? Again, you think of a guy, where's Matt or Yako? You think of a bigger guy, right? You don't think of a short little puny guy like me. However, most of us are about 5'8". So just, that goes. We make up for it in other ways. Get your mind out of the gutter. So you talk about that operator, you talk about that assaulter, but really the unsung heroes behind all that are the enablers, the intelligence, the supporters, the pilots, the people that get us to the right place at the right time with the right information. And those were the people that I really wanted to bring into this task force. There isn't a place much for an operator or an assaulter in domestic counter sex trafficking, right? That's law enforcement's responsibility. But when I worked all over the world, whoever my partners were, pick a nation, Iraqis, Afghanis, pick whatever nation you want. Those were our host nation partners that we were empowering and enabling to get on target with the right information. And that's what we do with Skull Games, okay? I'll talk more about that in detail, but that's where I've come. I got out in 2015. I've been working this problem set for about 10 years, and we've got it licked. It's time for us to scale, and we can only do that with your help in getting the word out. So we'll start a quick intro from Joe and then go around the horn, and then I'll pick it back up.
Joe Scaramucci, 21 years law enforcement, worked up in Waco at the sheriff's office. Also did 10 years as a task force officer with Homeland Security Investigations in Austin, downtown. Did 8 years of dead people and then moved into sex trafficking where I did right at 10 years. Been fortunate. I've worked trafficking investigations and operations literally all over the world. So I've had a pretty blessed career. I did 13 years in SWAT as a both operator and sniper, and then 12 years in aviation as well. So right up the road, done stings a million times down here in the Wilco area primarily. So very, very familiar with what you got going on down here. And I still do reserve law enforcement as well.
Hey, I'm Jess Lamb. I'm the founder of Atlanta Redemption Inc. and I'm also the survivor hunter with Skull Games. And I work with them to help identify tattoos that are on victims, to help put them together into a case file to figure out what they're related to as far as human trafficking is concerned and exploitation. And then we help identify gang tattoos and things like that because they can coincide. So that's what I do with Skull Games.
I am Candace Spangler. I'm from Kansas City, Missouri. I'm a mother, wife, and daughter, and I currently am unemployed. I volunteer with Skull Games as a survivor to hunter, and what I bring to the table is indicators. Like I can quickly identify and be able to assess if a woman's being trafficked.
So again, these people that you met, you can only have so much of an intro, right? They're the best at what they do. I unabashedly would tell you I'm the best at what I do. Like you paid for it. You started investing in me when I was 17 years old. I'm 55 now. I'm trying to pay you back a little bit. Thank you very much. Had an incredible life. And again, I think Joe is the best counter-trafficking cop in America. It's why he's on our team. I don't think anyone has been more successful. Maybe there are some people that have beaten your numbers, but one of his guys last year got 249 years. 249 years. So we'll talk about what we need to do to really combat this crime. And what Skull Games does, very specifically, how did this not work now all of a sudden? Is first of all identifying what this problem is, right? So when you read this thing, what we're going to try to emphasize, there's a million things to talk about, and we're going to talk about Skull Games, specifically what we do, but it's a problem right here in the United States. And many of you, again, I don't want to see a show of hands, who watched that movie Sound of Freedom, right? Again, I had hoped and prayed that the movie Sound of Freedom would raise the awareness and raise the boats for all of us. It has done the opposite. The counter-trafficking effort across the United States is shattered. It's absolutely shattered. I don't know exactly what it's about. One of the things, obviously, is the people involved with Sound of Freedom. They've got some issues that they've been working through that kind of came to light. And it also really shifted the focus from domestic problem to the overseas problem. That problem, as is depicted in that movie, is not the problem that we have in the United States. It's way worse. It's way worse in the United States. It's just hidden. So just like these two women talked about, What Jess specializes in is the iconography. She understands the tattoos and the markings. They brand their women. They literally put their names on them and other markers and things like that to demonstrate that I own you. And they use that to deconflict their product. And again, I don't know anyone in the world who's better than Jess identifying and recognizing that. And then again, Candace, in addition to be an incredible prayer warrior for us, she's got that sixth sense. She was in the game. And again, you'll hear me going back and forth between the game and the life, okay? And honestly, if you go away with one simple thing tonight, it's that. The women call it the life, and the pimp traffickers call it the game. To them, it's a game. It's all manipulation. It's all exploitation. And what they try to convince their victims of is it's a life. And they're trying to give these victims the thing in their life that they need. And they're focusing on these vulnerabilities. And one of the things we're going to do here in a minute with that stand up for each other is we have inherent vulnerabilities, right? You have children, right? How old are they? 16 and 23. Oh, is that you, right? Are you 16? Yep. Are you starting to push back a little bit from your mom and dad? Be honest. Dad smiling? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You eventually have to, right? And we don't understand this. Do you want to live with your mom and dad for the rest of your life? No. So at some point, unless your kids are living in the basement like Joe lives with his mom and dad in the basement, you begin to separate yourself from your mom and dad. You begin to separate your identity as their daughter, as what's your name? As Nadia. As Nadia. And who is Nadia? And we all go through that period when we're teenagers, right? Who is Nadia? Who is Jeff? Who is Joe? Who is Jess? You all go through that. And it's confusing as hell right now with all these things that are bombarding us. It's hard enough. And you're genetically hardwired to begin to distance yourself and separate yourself and find your own identity. But what you have a blind spot on is your own vulnerabilities. And you don't realize you're looking for acceptance and love and a partner. But the predators do. The predators know full well what it is you need and what they're looking for. And that's what they exploit. So really, of all the things that we're going to be talking about, we really want to harp in on these vulnerabilities. You're not safe. If you have the internet and your home, they're already in your home. And I'm not trying to scare you. You just have to understand it. And if we have time, Carrie back there, if we have a little bit of time, we're going to let Carrie tell her story last night. Uber driver. What did he call himself, Carrie? International pimp? Started grooming and trying to lure that woman right there on your 6-minute drive from the hotel here to Sheepdog. She was just coming out of a situational awareness class. So her feelers were up, right? And she came in today and gave us a report. And what did we find out about that guy?
Oh, he's been arrested for domestic violence, and he is online doing interviews as an international pimp.
6-minute Uber drive from the hotel to here. This is not far away. This is in Colombia. This is in Cambodia. This is in Cedar Park. It's not just in Austin, not just in Houston, it's not just in Dallas. So we've got to be able to build some comprehensive capability to combat it. And right now, all Skull Games is really at that tactical level. We're able to identify the women that are being sold online. And then as luck will have it, depending on how our investigations go and the mistakes that these traffickers make, we put a true identity to that trafficker. We package up those leads and send those to law enforcement for action. Again, that's where Joe is our ace in the hole. Because he's a cop and a credentialed cop, he can speak cop, right? And he can access cop databases. But we've got intel analysts, and again, anybody with one of these shirts on, go ahead and feel free to talk with. These Skull Games volunteers, they come from all different walks of life in the United States, but almost all of them are intel analysts. They're working for Fortune 500 companies, they're working for the military, they're working for law enforcement. They've got an incredible set of skills that we apply to this problem set because the law enforcement is woefully under-resourced. I think to date, I'd have to look at our numbers. I think we have almost 4,000 hours of investigative hours in support of law enforcement this year already. 3,300, I think we're at. 3,300. When I added it up, it's basically 24 hours a day for this year to date. We've supported them with investigative hours. Unless you're willing to have your taxpayer dollars hire 50% more cops, you aren't going to get there. So what we do is we provide analytical and operational support to law enforcement. Super, super unique. And there isn't another organization in the United States that's doing it. If they're telling you that they are, they're full of shit because they're not. And you got me on TV. If you think you're doing it, call me. because I call bullshit, and I'm sick of competing with these people that are saying they're doing things that Skull Games is doing. There's no one on the planet doing what we're doing. There's no one on the planet that has the skills and the capability, and yet we're starving artists. Okay, these are the three things that we focus on: identifying predators and their prey. We identify the prey because that's what's advertised online. So we first identified the victim because she's out there for sale. There's a picture of her, and there's somebody selling her. So we work that weakness in the system, in the business of selling humans. We interdict the predators, and there's a bunch of different time. I won't get too deep into it. What we've broken them into is predators for profit. Those are traffickers. So they're selling women because they want the money. And then there's the predators for pleasure. And those are the ones that are looking for kids. Those are the Johns that are buying girls. So when we do support law enforcement to conduct stings, and Joe will talk about that here in just a second, one of the things we'll offer them up is a 14-year-old, just to test and see who has that boundary and that limit. What kind of numbers did you come up with right here in Austin, Joe?
Well, let's talk about that, Jeff. So I did some number crunching today. This was about 10:30 this morning. I did some keyword searches on sex ads, right? So one thing I want to stress is 85% of the women that are involved in what we would view as prostitution are actually being trafficked. That comes from a very, very, very solid study that shows that, and it's completely evidence-based, right? It's not like somebody just poofed out a number. For Austin, there were 1.5 million sex ads in the city of Austin alone. When I did Cedar Park, there were almost 5,000 that say, hey, boom, I'm in Cedar Park, or I'll come to Cedar Park.
What period is that for this year, or is that just right now going to?
No, that's the last few years. Okay. So that's historical. In Georgetown, a little over 3,000, almost 5,000 in Pflugerville. Round Rock had 30,000. So we got to remember 85% of these in the greater Austin area are being trafficked. I actually posted a sex ad at 10:35 a.m. and at 10:36 a.m. somebody responded. That means somebody actively went to the website, actively typed in Austin, and then started searching these ads and found mine and then took the time to text. So 1 minute is what it took. At 10:47 a.m., I gave some asshole the wrong hotel to show up at, and he drove 35 minutes to find out he got ghosted. The others, I obviously didn't live demo this. It literally, when I tell you it takes less than 1 minute, it takes less than 1 minute with an app that probably a lot of people have on their phone to locate child pornography, to actively start bringing in child pornography. So just, it's an overwhelming, that in and of itself is overwhelming, yet alone the numbers here.
How long does it take to order a pizza? Longer than that.
Yeah.
Again,
It's
I don't
easier
know,
to order a woman than a pizza.
Yeah, I don't
to be
know what else
honest.
to tell people. Like these are numbers we can count. It's hard data, you know. And we'll talk a little bit about it again when we talk about that 85% of the women are being trafficked. When you're talking about prostitution, that's a sex act exchanged for something of value. That's prostitution, right? Now, if an element of force, fraud, or coercion is included in that, now that becomes trafficking. That's the bylaw. So again, when a girl is her pimp is telling her to go out and work, and she says, I don't feel like it, I don't feel good, I'm on my period, I want to take a minute, I want to go get something to eat, and you think he allows that? You think she has any say in that? So force, fraud, and coercion is a constant element in prostitution. And people have a hard time figuring those out. In fact, we're going in the wrong direction. We're having discussions about legalizing prostitution. And I have two simple, very, very simple questions, okay? If you are someone who thinks that there might be some good idea to legalize sex work, go ask a pimp. Go find a pimp and ask him how he thinks about it. Oh, he would love it. He would love it. And then go find me an old survivor. Not one who's 20, 21, 22, who still believes she's got some choice in the game, who still believes she's living the high life. Go find me a 40-year-old woman who survived the life and ask her what she thinks. And come back and tell me, and I'll change my opinion. So if you haven't filled out the stand up for each other real quick, you've got them in front of your hands. Michelle, if you go around and collect them. Yep.
anybody still have those?
Here's a couple. And we'll give Michelle the
Fold
mic.
them in half so nobody can see them if you don't mind.
I'll give
Oop, never
Michelle
mind.
the mic.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do here, Michelle, you're going to read them off. Okay. So what I want you to focus on, sorry, girl, is, again, there's inherent vulnerabilities in being humans, right? And when I first saw this, I think you guys, I forget I try to credit the woman. Her name is Rachel Hollis. Rachel Hollis. But people know Rachel Hollis. She's a famous writer, right? Yeah. Something? Yep. What did she write?
Girl, go wash your face, like self-help.
Okay, so Rachel Hollis built this, and I've adapted it. So sometimes I try to credit her. But I grew up, again, I joined the Army at 17. I met my wife when I was 15. Before getting out of the Army, I knew like 5 women. Like, I don't know women, I know my wife, okay? And she's not really a woman. She's my wife, right? So the first time I did this, I was blown away. Because there's a different perspective that I didn't recognize and understand. And what's crazy about these traffickers, they're good. And there's also a statistic out there that about 70% of them are generational. So they don't just come into the game fresh. They're brought into it, and they're trained, and decades and years, centuries of how to manipulate and exploit other human beings is taught to them. They're masters at it. Okay, everybody have it? So Michelle is going to read off the question. If you have a yes answer, you're just going to stand up. If you have a no answer, you're just going to remain seating. After Michelle reads it off, you're going to sit back down, okay? And again, maybe this is going to be eye-opening to some of y'all. It was to me. I've done this in groups of hundreds and hundreds of people. I did this at a church, one of these big mega churches one time with like 500 people. And so many people stood up. It just like, I have a hard time not getting weepy. I need some Kleenex because it breaks my heart what's happening out there in people's minds and their lives. Okay. Any questions on what it is we're doing? If you have a yes answer, you're going to stand up, and then we'll recock after every question. Take it away, Michelle.
Okay, guys. Have you ever experienced anxiety or depression?
And what are our kids doing online? When they experience anxiety and depression, are they talking about it online? Yep. They're sharing that online. And what are the predators doing? They're building a profile, and they're figuring out what your weaknesses are.
Okay, you can sit. Thank you. You're going to get a lot of this.
No, it doesn't hit speakers. You have to yell. It's only
Okay.
for the TV.
I am not confident in my body. Thank you.
Oh, that's pretty good. Nice job, Austin. Some confident body image, folks. Well done.
I feel stress or pressure when it comes to finances.
We live in a capitalist society. Beautiful. It's the best program you can have for upward mobility and equity. But it also brings in these stresses. And people hide and pretend there's something they're not.
Thank you.
For those that said no, can I get a job application? Like,
I feel like my peers / everyone on social media has their lives together except for me. Ooh,
Wow.
Wow. Okay,
All right,
yeah.
I'm just going to
I'm
straight up
standing.
saying,
Yeah.
Austin, you guys are some liars. Okay? I let the body image one go, but now everyone's like,
Oh no,
you
I'm
got to be truthful on this.
Thank you.
Okay?
Whoever it was,
Thank
thank
you, the one person
Yeah, thank
who was
you.
honest.
Do you drink or use drugs regularly?
Okay, now inherently, there's nothing wrong with that, right?
Yep.
But understand, there are those vulnerabilities. And again, with our young people, man, getting roofied, getting drunk in public, it raises your vulnerability through the roof.
Thank you. I have kept some issues and struggles a secret because I was afraid of being judged.
Oh, now we're getting truthful. Austin,
Thank you, guys.
Well done. Cedar Park.
Well, have you ever compared yourself to another person? That should really be like everybody.
See, and what's interesting is, we're most of the time we do women's self-defense, and it's just women. So this is a skewed audience because we've got dudes here. When you have a women's only course, how many women do you think stand up?
Every one of them.
Every single one of them. Yeah, that's
Every
the
one of
thing.
them.
That's the thing that blew me away.
Yep.
And just think about that leverage point, because again, these predators know that's something that you're dealing with, so they use it against you. Yep.
Have you ever had feelings of insecurity after comparing yourself with someone else? Yeah. Thank you, guys.
An inherent human trait that can be manipulated. She's just standing up for good. She's I'm not doing a squat exercise.
Yeah. Come on, guys, sit down. Have you ever experienced jealousy over another's relationship?
And again, you're
Thank
going to
you.
hear these stories from Candace and Jess, but this is the game. A trafficker has a stable of 5 to 6 girls statistically, and those 5 or 6 girls is because he's building a family, okay, this life, and he builds connections between them, and then he purposefully makes them betray each other, and he makes them compete with each other. It's the most diabolical crap you can imagine. It's disgusting.
Sometimes I feel lost or overwhelmed and don't know what's next for my life. Thank you. I sometimes question my self-worth and worry I'm not good enough.
And you're going to hear about these Romeo pimps. Okay, you're going to hear about both these women, how they met their traffickers. It isn't by force. Our girls are not being kidnapped. Again, if you call me and tell me that your daughter was kidnapped, I'm sorry, she's probably going to be murdered. These women are to be consumed over and over and over again. And these are all the vulnerabilities that they're looking at.
Have you ever felt like God could not love you or forgive you? Thank you guys for your honesty on that one.
And it's not, again, these traffickers that we've met, they will purposefully go to the churches. They will purposefully go to rich areas, because when you're in the game, when you're a pimp for 5, 10, 8 years, whatever, I went backwards, 5, 10, 12 years, it's like, what's the challenge? They enjoy getting girls and women out of churches. They enjoy getting girls and women out of colleges. They enjoy getting wives separated from their husbands. It's a kick to them. So obviously, girls that come up in very, very troubled homes and very, very lower economic situations are at a higher risk. But you're dealing with the egos and narcissism that are off the charts. They want folks like you and your kids. That's what makes them feel good, and that's what gives them the bragging rights with their other traffickers.
One of my last ones actually spent time praying for his victims. Oh, you remember that?
Yeah.
Yes.
He would tell her, he was in jail, bow your head. She'd bow her head, and he'd be like, Heavenly Father, and would pray for her safety when she went out and turned a trick, that she wouldn't get arrested and all that crap.
All right. Have you ever gone further with a guy or girl than you wanted to? Have you ever participated in sexting or any form of cyber sex? Thank you.
Obviously, we see the vulnerabilities in that, right? Yep. Do it. It's fine. Just recognize the vulnerabilities, right? Unless you're under 18. Don't do it.
Have you ever been physically abused?
Okay. This is where I start to get teary. It breaks my heart, okay? We're in Cedar Park. 1, 2, are you standing? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We have a dozen people in here that have been physically abused. Physical abuse. Imagine the devastating effects and impacts of that. Now this next one.
Have you ever been sexually abused?
It's almost the same amount of numbers. And what bothers me, you can have a seat, is when I talk about skull games, we're the tippy top of the iceberg. We're looking at people that are for sale online. What's happening underneath that water is physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse. We can't see when a mom is selling her daughter for fentanyl. We can't see when a dad or an uncle or a boyfriend is molesting a daughter or a niece. We can't see when the coach is molesting it. We can't see that. It has to become a commercial enterprise. So keep that in mind. When you're talking about these numbers, 1.5 million sex ads, What is that? 5, 8, 10x of people that are being sexually abused in the Austin region over the last few years? The numbers are astronomical.
Have you ever been verbally abused? Thank you. Have you ever been emotionally abused? Thank you. Have you ever been sexually assaulted by an acquaintance?
Interesting. You haven't stood up for those other ones, did you? Are you kind of new? Did I miss you? You've been standing up. I missed you. Okay.
Situation awareness, right?
Yeah. It's all right. And again, sexual assault by an acquaintance is the preponderance of it. You know, and when we teach self-defense in jiu-jitsu, it's always the guy, you know, jumping out of the bushes. I'm gonna rape you, grabbing my beard. You know what I mean? But it's that does happen. But the risk that that's going to happen to someone here is very, very low. The risk that an acquaintance is going to begin to get handsy and start to move on you is high. And crossing that threshold to assault, it's something you all deal with.
If I told you that you are a special creation and that God loves you, would you believe?
Beautiful. All right. For those of you who are sitting, and I know you're representing someone else, okay? You are all special creatures, okay? You can have whatever faith tradition you want, but in the faith tradition that I come from, God created the world in 6 days, again, however it is, metaphorically. But the last thing he created was what? Woman. And every time God created something, what did he say? This is good. What did he say after he created woman? This is very good. Okay? Women are the crown jewel of creation. Okay? And again, even if you're not sharing the faith tradition that I have, evolutionarily, you're the crown jewel. You bring life into the world. You nurture life. I can't do that. Women are the most important thing on the face of the planet, and children come from them. So if you're going to have a plan to disrupt the balance in the world, who are you going to go after? Women and children. And who are we going to use as the exploiters? Men. It's genius. And we need more women to understand that you are a special creature of God. You're one of a kind. One of a kind. Don't ever forget it. And of course, these traffickers are going to tell you that and try to manipulate and exploit it. But you're better than that and you're special. And we need more men to stand in the gap and protect these women and children and these families. So thank you very much for participating. Anything you guys want to add to that exercise? Joe, ladies?
One thing I would bring up is, especially on the sexual assault and the physical abuse and emotional abuse, are the number of people that stood up, right? That is actually higher than the number of women in here. So one thing we don't always talk about is men and boys. And men and boys are being trafficked too. In some places, you could actually get quite a bit more money for a boy than you would a girl. So that is all something that we still investigate just the exact same, but just understand that men are represented in this as well. While we are the ones that are exploiting, we are also at times being exploited as well.
One thing that I didn't hear, but I've heard in other places, is, you know, if we are being abused, right?
Men?
If we are being abused by those that are closest to us.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Right? Our mom, our dad, our brother, then who can we trust?
Yeah.
Right? So when
Yeah.
you go out into the world, that gets exploited. And I mean, if your closest one, the one that's supposed to care for you, didn't, well, that throws the whole thing off.
Yeah. The whole system is built on that. And you'll hear the stories. They'll tell you, a buyer will come in and they'll say, he's a cop, he's a lawyer, he's a this, he's a that. They stack the system against you. You'll hear their stories. How multiple time felon are you? How many felonies are you busted for?
7.
7 felonies. Okay. It's by design. They create a barrier between her and the rest of the world. And they force them to commit these crimes as a way to separate them. So again, you're talking about a familial level. We're talking about even a community level. They need to isolate and separate these victims from everything that they think is safe. You're spot on. Joe, this is all yours for the next couple.
Yeah, we'll talk about what is trafficking, right? So there's a lot of disconnect when it comes to this, particularly in the United States. Trafficking, as Jeff said, is the commercial exchange for sex or labor under force, fraud, and coercion. So the movie Pretty Woman, right? People, oh, prostitution's glamorous, it's beautiful. It's not. Even if it's, quote, consensual, I assure you, the person who buys has the power. If I want a steak cooked medium rare at a steakhouse downtown and I'm paying for it, guess how my steak's going to get cooked? Medium rare, right? Because that's what I want. So look at it that same way. Now, I will say I won't send a steak back, by the way. So force, fraud, coercion. This is where the largest disconnect for law enforcement is, and prosecutors as well. We have to prove that to prove human trafficking by statute, right? Does that make sense? So the way I try to tell cops is just because I don't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And just because I can't prove it doesn't mean it doesn't exist, right? So when we're looking at how this manifests and plays out for victims, traffickers, and law enforcement, who would you guess goes to jail more than anybody in trafficking? The victim, right? Why? He tells her, you keep my name out of your mouth. I will bond you out on your misdemeanor. Let's be real. Travis and Williamson counties are just the same as McLennan. Bond on that is going to be $100, if not a personal recognizance, right? You're out nothing. The trafficker's out nothing. She's going to actually probably get her ass beat for being caught by the police in a sting and still have to make up that money, right? So we're actually creating an environment where victims of trafficking end up with 7 felonies because we feel like we can't.
Did he add a felony? It was 6, right? Oh, it was?
7.
Right.
Come on. Lucky number 7. Oh, yeah. I have a good friend of mine. She was a trafficking survivor. Same thing. She's been to prison 6 times. She actually has her prison IDs in a museum downtown here in Austin. But she'll tell you, every time I went to prison, I did it to keep the trafficker out. It's the manipulation that goes with it. We ask domestic violence victims, why don't they leave? It's the same manipulation that's going on. So we have to prove that. And again, like I said, just because it can't be identified, and a lot of times we can identify that, we're actually criminalizing victims of trafficking. If you see a sting operation in the news and there's mugshots of women, they screwed up royally, I promise. If there's a bunch of men, they did a good job. That's the first thing I look for is the mugshots to see whether or not they're arresting all these women.
PE.
Oh.
And better got her.
Yeah. This one is drawing, right?
I don't remember.
Yeah. Who here is above 18 but under 30? How old are you? 20? 28? You look 18. 27, you're up. Come on. I always pick the youngest because you were the closest to drawing something for your parents for like Mother's Day or something. All I want you to do, all I need, I've got all these markers, all these colors. I just want you to draw a house. That's it.
Really?
Yep. But I don't want a black one.
Not good enough, huh?
No.
Okay.
Red is cool, but I don't want a red roof. Purple?
Yes. Because why not? You said the roof couldn't be red. You didn't say the house couldn't be red.
You're right.
Oh, she fucking wazing?
There you go.
Do you want a door?
Sure.
Do you want to enter your house? Black? Okay. Do you want a window? How many windows?
Let's go for 1.
Just one? I'd rather have 2. I like lighting. Do you want a chimney? Let's not do black though. No. Not red.
Well, then why not green?
Okay. You have green smoke. That's awesome. Can you do me a favor and just sign your name on the bottom, because I do not want anybody thinking I drew this. This is a high quality home. Awesome. Thank you so much. What's your name?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren.
So my point to this is, how long did it take Lauren to start looking at me for the answers to what I wanted for the house? I think it was twice on the eraser, right? It doesn't take long. Anybody know what that's called other than any people that are in like the brain world around here? So there's a thing called learned helplessness. And that's what traffickers are trying to do, right? 1950s, you got a doctor doing doctor things, right? Whatever doctors do. Here's a doctor. Has a doctorate. Oh, okay. So doctor things, right? Take a dog kennel, electrify the floor. This is the 30,000-foot view. Electrify the floor of the dog kennel, sound off a horn, and shock the dogs. Learns what happens when the horn goes off. I get shocked. Can I do anything about it? Somebody told me once, well, they could jump. I'm like, and suspend in the air, huh? Then they took a little partition and made it where the dog could jump over to an unelectrified side, right? Put the dog there, sound the horn. What does the dog do? No, the dog stays there and gets the shit shocked out of it. Why? It learned I am powerless. I can't do anything about this. So that's what we're trying to overcome when we're even doing our interviews with victims and survivors. We're trying to overcome all of that learned helplessness, and that's hard. It's very hard.
So did Joe use force, fraud, or coercion in that?
Is there some jiu-jitsu involved?
Yeah, it's pretty light, right? But the point is, it's not your responsibility to demonstrate force, fraud, or coercion. Just assume it. Because again, what's happening in closed doors? This is two people that Joe just met. Now what happens when you draw the purple roof and he slaps you and says, "I fucking told you, I don't want that color." How long in a relationship do you think that takes? So if something that you would consider prostitution, assume it's trafficking. That tiny little demo that Joe just did, remember that. That's here within friends. And again, that's human nature because we want to not have conflict with people. And if you create conflict, I just beat you. And when you get inoculated to the beating, then I beat your friend. And that's why I have a stable. When Candace gets tough enough where she doesn't mind getting hit, I start hitting Jess. That's the way it works. When I went through SEER school in the United States Army, it was the same thing. They teach you how to resist. Who else? Could you go to SEER? You end up going to SEER school ever? Where's Matt? Is Matt hiding out here? Where's Matt at? Oh, so in SEER school, they try to teach you. Yeah, I know Ty did. So they teach you how to resist interrogation and how to not get manipulated. And they hit you and they slap and they do everything they can within the bounds of the military regulations. I don't mind it. But when they pull out my friend Ty, my fellow Green Beret, and start beating him, I folded like a lawn chair. So it isn't just you. It's these sister wives. It's the other women that he has in the stable. And he develops a hierarchy where you have an ownership, or not an ownership, a relationship with them. And again, you guys will talk about that more. Oh, I'm sorry. Just knocked your hat.
Oh, you really did go to slapping Jess.
Yeah.
And now we go to the violence wheel.
And
for crying out loud. This is very well known in throughout law enforcement, particularly for domestic violence. But we see the exact same thing with sex trafficking. So isolating, right? Grooming, getting them away from their family. That's not every time. You'd be surprised at the number of kids that are getting picked up on a Friday night, trafficked all weekend, dropped off on Monday at school. It happens. The minimizing, the denying, the using a loved one, those are big ones. The economic control is going to be huge. Coercion and threats. There's I say really good. There's a video out of Beaumont of a trafficker who comes in. The girl's on the bed. There's two other girls against the wall. He hears that this one's wanting to leave. So he's mouthing at her, and somebody else is videoing. And he takes that right fist, rears back, pops her, right? So now he grabs her and he starts beating on her. You know when people get knocked out and they almost do like the rigor mortis and they're like on the ground, like, that's her. And then he gets these two and is like, come on, start kicking and beating, right? You're never going to, not never, I don't have to physically abuse them. They know what I'm capable of doing because I just demonstrated it, right? So that keeps them in check, keeps her barely alive with that particular one. But that intimidation, coercion, and threats, those are huge. Another one, economic control. If I can control your money, let's be very real, I can control you. That's a fact. You know, you may have a very good paying job, but if it goes into my account and you want money, or you're going to go out on the street, you're going to do what I want. Homelessness is a very real thing, right? All of those things are very real. So we see the economic control. You know, there's a big misconception. Well, it's a 50-50 split. He provides protection. She keeps the other half. My ass. That's not how that works. At best, you know, you think you're looking for somebody with busted teeth and black eyes and all? Nails on fleek, eyebrows looking good, hair looking good. Why? A, I had one tell me, I'm just an investment in my product. B, she thinks she's being rewarded, and those little trickles of love are what keep her there. So we see all these quite a bit on the violence wheel. Hopefully Jess won't get hit again. Again, prostitution is not a victimless crime. It's not. You know, obviously the ladies will share their story and you'll get a better feel for that. But I love when particularly men, but I've also been pretty astonished with the number of women are like, well, it's victimless. It's two consenting adults. Consent my ass. That is not consent, right? We're not even going to get into that. But even if it's, quote, consensual, it's not. So just assume everybody there is a victim of something, unless any of the females in here ever go to Disney when you were like 8 and be like, can't wait to turn 18 so I can sell my body for sex to these men. If you think they're nice looking men, I assure you, they're usually disgusting. Some dudes show up with like sawdust in their hair. It's not this pretty, whoever the hell played with in
Richard Gere
looking dude, right? It ain't him. It's dudes that are uglier than us. So just something to consider.
I'll take this one real quick. So again, those of you, if you remember from even Psych 101, even high school psychology, the thing I like about this is what am I looking at here? Who's remembering it? Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So one of the problems that happens with this, as Joe is talking about this issue, is we're living in here, right? We're all kind of working towards self-actualization. So when we say, why don't they leave? We're thinking they're living in this space. They're not. They're living in this space. Again, you'll hear these stories in a minute. They don't know where they're going to eat, if they're going to sleep, what they're going to eat, what they're going to wear. So the trafficker pushes them down into this lowest level of existence. Think about how you would feel today if you lost all of your money. A couple right here. He dies, you lose all your money. What does that feel like? That fear. That's the fear that these traffickers need to keep their victims at. So when we're up here and not understanding, why don't you just leave? Why don't you just leave? They don't even know where the hell they are half the time. Because they're sleep deprived. They're malnourished. It's all part of the game and the process. So when you do meet somebody, and even you stood here and you saw these different people that are standing up, even these women and sexually abused, man, they flip back and forth into these spaces depending on their triggers. So we as a community have to understand, hey, we sit up here, but you got to get down on your knees and you got to recognize the viewpoint that these people are forced to live in. We've got to put more behind bars, and that's what Skull Games does better than anyone else. That is where we've got to move to. Do we need to have more awareness raising? Maybe. Do we need to have more aftercare and restoration programs for the women and the victims? 100%. But unless we put these guys behind bars, again, what are your choices? These women don't have the choice until these guys get put away.
Yeah, so just real fast, what's a pimp? Who's the first person you think of when I say pimp? Who? Jay-Z? Who else? For me, it's Snoop Dogg, right? I start thinking the suits. I start thinking not so much anymore with the suits. I think everything's like Dickies pants and t-shirts now. But, you know, it's the purple crusted dude out there in his little suit with his Cadillac, making the girls work with his fedora and cane, right? That actually happens. There's a strip in LA where you can, I mean, it's everywhere. Exactly what you would see on TV. There's one in Houston, Dallas as well.
The players' ball. There's an award ceremony every year for pimps.
Yeah, so that
they walk in with their girls on dog necklaces. And again, I'm not here to shame you, but I'm going to shame you. Don't fucking laugh at Snoop Dogg. Don't fucking laugh at that shit. There's a culture that we've allowed to permeate our society. Snoop Dogg played with pimping. Look up Snoop Dogg. He played with pimping. He became a pimp for a very short time just to check it out. It drives me bananas that we sit here. You guys are all sitting here and we're talking about what's happening to women and children in our society. And on your way home, you're listening to this filth. You're listening to all this shit we're talking about. Fuck this, fuck that, slap this, do that. The halftime show a couple years ago at the Super Bowl, half of those players were pimps. When are we going to wake up? So I'm not here to shame you, but I'm here to shame you. Just you're free to listen to whatever the hell you want to listen to, but just know it. I went to I keep looking for Matt. I don't know why. There was a jiu-jitsu thing, a women's only jiu-jitsu tournament 2 years ago. First women's only jiu-jitsu tournament. Most incredible, strong, capable planet. Women's only jiu-jitsu. I'm watching it. And they got their fight songs coming out. You know what they're listening to? Shit that's degrading them. Stuff that's talking about their body parts and what they're going to do to those body parts. These are the strongest, most capable women on the planet, and they're completely immune to what their walkout song is. You guys, wake up. Understand what you're consuming. Because again, this little tip of the iceberg, is anybody surprised that, what's the guy's name? P. Diddy, Puff Daddy, whatever the hell we're calling him, that he's a trafficker and he's an abuser? Are we surprised? Did he ever sing about it? Yeah, he's been singing about it for years. And now we feign, it's ridiculous. Wake up. I'll get off my soapbox. We'll jump right into this. Wake up.
This is a real book. It's called Pimpology, the 48 Laws of the Game. I will ask you, please, if you want it, reach out to us. We might have done some copyright infringement. I've been told that research kind of overshoots that, so this is research purposes. But these are real. I mean, these are real laws. I ripped it up in Killeen one time. I ripped a trafficker out of his driver's window with the audiobook playing. It's a real thing. But it's 48 laws of what you're doing. What's number 5? Prey on the weak. Right?
What's number 12? Ain't no love in this shit.
Anybody here know what a bottom is?
Whoops, sorry.
Whoop, yep.
Coming back.
Get you a bottom. She's the girl that runs everything. Everything for him. She's the one that's going to go to prison for him. She's the one that's going to do everything. If he wants either one of them beat, she's the one that's going to have to do it. She's the most victimized in this entire thing. And I assure you, the day that she starts getting beat, it's even worse. So definitely reach out if you want to read this or you want to check it out. But don't give him any more money.
If this doesn't gross you out enough, you can also Google how to be a motherfucking pimp. So that one's a hard one to read because that guy's out there. But you might know how to be a motherfucking pimp kids version. So it's graphically drawn for him, and he kind of lays it all out there for you. So yeah, download How to Be a Motherfucking Pimp children's version, and you can read it to your kids tonight when they go to bed. And if that doesn't help you understand what their mindset is, I don't know what else would do it better. Anything else you want to point on these laws? No. Yep. We giving him enough time?
All right, sex buyers. What do they look like? Any thoughts? Everybody, right? Everybody. It depends on the venue, but I will say, particularly in illicit massage businesses, white men between 25 and 60 is the primary demographic. When it comes to going out and doing it in a hotel, white, black, pink, purple, yellow, I don't care what color you are. It's going to look like a collage of colors up there. But one thing that it does pretty much have to be is men with disposable income. Who here pays for sex? Just raise your hand. Okay, thank you. I always try to get somebody. Like, oh, me! We're going to talk. But no, it literally looks like anybody. I saw a video, and I'm not even kidding, of a man who could not walk. He was easily in his mid-90s. They had to help him on the bed. And then I've had 16-year-olds show up, and you're like, what are you doing, kid? Right? That being said, I did post that ad earlier. Within just a couple hours, 21 dudes had reached out to me before this had even started. So I could probably go here in a little bit, pull it up, and there's going to be another 20. When
You catch one of these people and they're convicted, how long do they typically go with?
So if you're arrested for the solicitation of prostitution, we are the first state in the country that has made that a felony. You have up to 2 years in prison and up to a $10,000 fine. What has generally happened on first offenses is some form of like a John school or something, community service, whatever. We're in a unique position in McLennan County, at least. When it was still a misdemeanor, we were having dudes getting like 90 and 120 days in jail. That's unheard of in almost pretty much all other jurisdictions, at least in Texas. But 21 of those will catch a felony. Now, that became a major deterrent, too, whenever it did pass. There are review boards where they can go on and be like, I met with Sally, and she was just great, blah, 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 blah. And on those, they were saying, look, I can't catch a felony for this. I'm out. I'm not doing it. So it did have a deterrent factor, but you'd be surprised. So, yeah, it just totally depends on jurisdiction.
And it's a great question. And one of the things we're trying to do, because there are still places in the country that want to put these women on the stand to testify. And by design, they're the worst witnesses you can have because they've got 7 felonies and they've been caught in this, that, or the other, the psychological manipulation. So what Skull Games, the people you'll meet from Skull Games, they're professionals in intelligence, open source intelligence, leveraging the technology. So we and what Joe teaches law enforcement and even judges is don't put the victim on the stand. Let the technology speak for itself. They are bleeding everything they're doing and saying on the technology, whatever communications they're having. Again, you think of these women that, you know, we have these pictures of them being bound, right, and in cages and things like that. Yes, it does happen. There are bound women, there are women in cages, but by and large, they're out. And what they're bound by is that thing in your pocket, that cell phone. I can only imagine when you're walking around with that cell phone and it starts to vibrate or buzz, how your heart drops. That thing is the death sentence, but it's also the thing that we are able to exploit. That's the gap. That's the weakness. That's the vulnerability that the traffickers have. And as America catches up, as our judges catch up, and you know who's catching up faster than our judges is our juries. But now we need DAs to take it to jury trial.
You got one life in trial that you're not going to get there.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. Joe, we had another PE, and then we're off to the...
Yeah, so just even side note, if you use the technology and the data, I had a trafficker get 249 years. I had 4 women take the stand and say they were all the masterminds and he did nothing wrong. And the evidence spoke for itself, right? The evidence told the story. I'm going to pick on you since you were the next youngest. I like picking on young kids. It's fun. Right? I mean, who doesn't like picking on children? So I'm kidding. Usually at this point, I'll hand out note cards and I ask everybody to write down the most traumatic event of your life. So I want you to stand up. No, I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. But they fold it up and then I read it out loud for everybody, right? And you watch the squirming because people get uncomfortable. But in doing that, another thing that I like to use, particularly for law enforcement, is this. What do you like better, hamburgers or hot dogs to eat? Hamburgers. You're a good American. When was the first time you said, man, a hamburger's better than a hot dog? You don't remember. To ask real quick, has anybody died in your family choking on a hamburger? Okay, I had a lady start crying one time because her grandfather actually did, and I felt like crap. I felt like crap because I laughed because I thought she was kidding. She wasn't kidding. Internal Affairs loved that one. Do you like cheese on your hamburger? What kind? When was the first time you said, man, an American's better than pepper jack? Don't remember. Ketchup, mustard, mayonnaise. None of the above. Okay. Lettuce, tomato. That is plain. When was the last time you had your 5-year-old hamburger like that? What was it? Yeah, what day? Last month, what day? 17th? Yeah, you're shrugging. Remember, a long time in homicide, too. I know when somebody's being deceptive. What day was it? You couldn't tell me. Why not? You don't remember, and it's not traumatic, is it? So what we're expecting, thank you. What we're expecting is people coming in with complex trauma and PTSD to tell us stories that they can't recall. There's nothing traumatic. A hamburger is a good thing, right? Unless you're on a diet. But aside from that, it's a wonderful thing. So just think of that example, right? Why doesn't she leave? She can't even tell me the story. It's psychologically impossible. And if she does tell me a story, guess what it generally does? It changes. And if it changes, she's doing what? She's lying, right? As cops, we're like, you said A, B, C, and now you're saying A, C, B. You're lying. You go to jail. It's just that's how that works. So we need to understand trauma. We need to understand how it's manifesting in front of us. And usually it appears to be something negative. It's not. It's just we're not getting the full story.
So I'll pause for a second here to take any questions before we hand it over to Candace and Jess, because I anticipate they're going to close it out over the next hour. Again, if you guys, you already have your bailout. Yep. Any questions for us? Oh, good question. Yeah, because that's at the end. We might get to it. So an infamous pimp named Iceberg Slim was known to say, "Pimping ain't a sex game, it's a skull game." And that's important, and it's what we're talking about. We think of this as sex. We think of this as consensual. We think of this as business. Again, we've glorified pimping. No, even the pimps know this ain't about sex. This is about the mind and who controls the mind. If I control the mind, I control the body. So I took that away from them. The other piece of it too is we've turned it into a game. So tomorrow and Sunday, if any of you guys want to come back, we're going to be in this room Sunday and Saturday and Sunday all day. Come in the afternoons, because that's when it really gets hot and heavy. We'll be hunting, and we break into teams, and they actually compete. So the information that you find, the girls that you're able to identify, the traffickers that you're able to identify, the veracity and the details in the lead packets that you're able to build to send to law enforcement, we've turned it into a game, and we compete with each other, and we make fun of people that suck at it. You know what I mean? And we just have a good time. So you come in here on Saturday and Sunday, and you're going to see us laughing. Some of us might still be crying. Some of us just like to cry a little more than others. But you'll come in and see us laughing. So we've turned it into a game. And then again, personally, through my years in combat, I've looked at it as a game. You got good, you got bad. You got black chess pieces, you got white chess pieces, right? I grew up in the 70s and 80s. The good guys wore the white cowboy hats. The bad guys wore the black cowboy hats. Now everything wants to be gray, right? Everyone wears a freaking gray cowboy hat. No. There's good guys and there's bad guys. And they've got their moves and we've got our moves. And Skull Games is on the chessboard and we're playing. And sometimes we're playing checkers. They're playing checkers and we're playing chess. And other times and the problem is, even if you play chess with a kid, a 5-year, you're going to lose some pawns. You can't play chess without losing pieces unless you've got some magic opening move that can win rapidly. So those are the 3 reasons that we call it Skull Games. Yes?
Just a quick question. You talk a lot about what would you say is the percentage of digital interaction, kind of opening that door as opposed to personal one-to-one, like you said, going to churches?
That's easy.
Is there a percentage more cyber?
Oh, hugely. We'll both answer it. Yeah.
It's roughly 85%.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the question was, what is the percentage of what I believe I'm tracking is traffickers using the digital platforms to reach out and groom and create victims, right? Yeah, it's in excess of 85%. And that's coming from survivors of trafficking that were, growing up in current times versus the 1980s, right? When we didn't have it. I tell parents all the time, if you think for half a second you have to worry about zip ties on your car doors and somebody coming and kidnapping your kid, you are dead wrong. The boogeyman does not show up jumping out of the bushes. The boogeyman through your router at night. That's where it's coming from. So it's a great question. The absolute statistical overwhelming majority, Instagram and Facebook. And I don't care if kids tell you Facebook's for old people, they're still on Facebook.
Any other? Yep. Yeah, you first, then well, right to left.
In the same vein as technology, I know all of your statistics over there, those ads, they're for meeting people in person, but everything's virtual now. Are you seeing it more often that people are just purchasing pictures, photos?
Yeah, so what she's...
Victims,
Yep, so what she asked about was the number that's just taking place electronically, right? Like an example is OnlyFans, right? I can sit behind the safety of my own house. I can perform sex acts at your request on video. I get money. I can also get online and get free pornography if I want it, right? So what is that? When you actually break it down, if I can show a high probability of trafficking through the online footprint and then go to OnlyFans, I'll catch my trafficker every time because that's where he's going to mess up. So yes, there are some, do not get me wrong, that do cam shows, things like that. That's very real. It happens all the time. But still the overwhelming majority, let's just be real here. Men want sex, right? Eventually, watching something on TV or the computer or the phone is not going to be enough. And it's going to lead to that anyway. And if I tell you, look, I can subscribe to your OnlyFans for $20 a month, or I'll pay you $1,000 right now, all I need to do is have an hour with you, that's a lot of money. And if you're desperate enough for money that you're on OnlyFans, you might be desperate enough to go for that 1 hour, right? And traffickers realize that as well, and they're going to keep turning you out anyway.
It just comes down to money, and it's pennies on the dollar. So they do both. They'll be running their girls for OnlyFans. They'll be running all the webcam stuff. But again, the in-person is 150, 200, 300 an hour or more. So really, when we went through COVID is when I thought maybe this would shift, right? It just really didn't. Even during COVID, you had a very, very short window where the market kind of took a dive, like literally a week or two, when we all were like, what's going on? You know what I mean? Spraying our groceries and stuff. It was really about a week or two. And then they started adding specials. There were discounts. You know, there was free COVID tests. It was 2 for 1. It was all this. So even as you saw it begin to shift, they kind of tested it out during COVID, is can we make enough money with just the online virtual stuff? They can't. And then again, when you look at it from the point of view of the buyer, like Joe's saying, they're having sex, but it's really power and control and manipulation that this person is paying for. Again, somewhere in their mind, they think they're getting love or some sort of a relationship or intimacy. It's power and control, and you just can't have that as much from a virtual relationship. So
I've had them ask me if I'll. Obviously, they thought they have asked, like, will you tell me you love me during sex? Like, sure, Daddy. Of course I will. I love you.
And you pay for that. It's called girlfriend experience. Mm-hmm. You pay extra money because it's extra harmful to the victims. Extra harmful to have to pretend you're intimate. We have one question over here first. Yep.
Yeah, so you said in order to charge for trafficking, you have to demonstrate force, fraud, or coercion. Other than like text messaging, how are you guys proving that before the law? And then kind of the second problem of that question is, what's the difference in charges for trafficking versus solicitation?
So the question is, when it comes to the force, fraud, coercion, how are you proving that with digital evidence? B, how is solicitation different than trafficking? So a couple things here. I don't charge human trafficking very often. I usually, if I can prove 2 or more women, I will charge aggravated promotion of prostitution. I can show that you are promoting 2 women. That's easy. That's text messages and putting ads online. That's all I have to prove. 5 to 99 or life carries the same penalty group, right? Money laundering. You're laundering money. You have to. I can charge that. Money doesn't lie. It's black and white. So those are alternative charges are one way. When it comes to the force, fraud, coercion, usually how we're proving that is when you get to the trafficker and you get their device and you do your data dump of it, the outgoing text messages generally are exempt from hearsay. So the attorneys, the DAs, the AUSAs are able to turn around and say, look, he told her, post up now or I'm going to beat the shit out of you. Force. Why are you doing this and this and this and this? Fraud. So we're being able to prove that with the digital evidence, generally from the outgoing text messages and sometimes from the incoming text messages if they give context to the out. Solicitation is the purchasing of the human being. Human trafficking is the selling of the human being, right? So in Texas, it used to be prostitution. That was it. If I arrested a sex buyer, it was prostitution. If I arrested a woman for that, which we quit in like 2017, then it was prostitution as well. Now the solicitation is just the purchase of. One thing that's cool though, if you purchase a person and if I can prove human trafficking, I'm going to do everything I can to find every buyer she had, because guess what he can be arrested for? Human trafficking. If she's a victim and he doesn't know it, or he does, we can still go after him for the same human trafficking charge. So it's just really a.
So again, the flaw in your question was other than texts. No. That's it. It's that easy. And that's what we do. Identify through open source what they're saying publicly on these accounts that we can see and say, hey, law enforcement, hey, judge, this is the evidence that we're seeing. And stick around afterwards. I'll talk about what that is, but it's acronyms, it's emojis, it's all these little symbols. It's all the markings on their bodies. It's all their markings on their social media where we're saying, this is smoke, we believe there's fire. So when we get them to that level of probable cause, reasonable suspicion, and they do get into that cell phone, it's over. It's everything. The texting is everything. Yeah. One more question, then we're gonna hand it over. Yep.
So you mentioned like Facebook and I'm already forgetting the other one, but what about stuff like Snapchat and TikTok? Do predators try and prey on people using those? Or like,
so to make that initial contact, it's hard for us to see, to hold on to all that stuff, you know what I mean? But to make initial contact. So again, a lot of times we can see the initial contact, but then they'll jump off to these messenger apps and talking on all these other things. So it does happen. And again, guys, the stuff we're telling you is we're looking like this. You know what I mean? There's so much we can't do or see because we live in a society that values your privacy. We live in a society that values your security. You know, and what these guys are getting away with, they're manipulating every single platform. Any video game that touches the internet, they're on it.
Roblox for the small kids.
Yep, Roblox, Minecraft. What's that little
Discord
thing called that people play? The kid, the stream. If it touches the internet, they're there. But usually when they really start getting into and digging into the particulars, they're jumping to another app where they think they can't be seen or heard. So that's where we get our foothold is in that open source space. Okay.
I assure you, things like Snapchat are not as secret as you think.
We're gonna hold questions until the end. Again, we're here to hang out all night, but the main event is here. Whoever's going for first here.
Candace wants me to go first.
Okay. And again, the mic is only for those folks. No one can hear you.
All right. So I'm Jess Lamb. I'm a survivor of commercial exploitation. A little bit about my background is I'm from a two-parent home. I grew up actually in a great home. And my parents were very heavily involved in missionary work and missions work and things like that, locally and overseas. And we were always helping families out that were in need. And so when my older brother went to college, they moved a man into our home that was friends with my dad. He worked in our church as a kids minister leader. And he moved in during a divorce and he began sneaking in my room at night when I was 14 and sexually abusing me. I started sneaking out at night to avoid him coming into my room. He would leave cigarettes in a little zebra box that I'd have on my dresser or leave razor blades because I was a self-harmer. So he would do that to keep me quiet. And so I started sneaking out of my house at night. And then when I started getting caught, I ended up being my parents' bad kid. And everybody in my family was, in school, doing great, going to college, all those things. And I just started to decline. I began self-harming. Like I said, I was sneaking out, smoking pot, just hanging out with bad crews. And then when the man that was molesting me started catching me sneaking out, he started to threaten, he was like, no one's going to believe you if you say anything, just different things like that. I ended up getting in-school suspension and for having cigarettes in class. And I passed a note to a boy in my class and I was like, this is what's going on in my house. And the teacher picked it up. The teacher takes that note and gives it back to me and says, take this home to your folks. I want to make sure that they know what's going on. So I forged my mom's signature and they caught it immediately. and they called my folks and told them. My parents set me down in our living room. I'll never forget it. You can't hear me? All right. So my parents set me in the living room with them, and my dad looks the guy straight in the face, and he was like, "Are you touching my daughter?" And the guy goes, "No, I would never." And so my dad looks over to me and he goes, why are you making that up? And I was like, "Yeah, Dad, I made it up. I'm a liar. I'm your bad kid," and I will never forget that day. But I self-harmed that day, and I ended up leaving home, and my grandmother took me in. I lived with her for a few months, and sorry, Candace is the crier. I'm the badass, y'all.
She really is a badass.
No, Candace is a badass too. But my grandma took me in, and my dad was like, "Hey, this is too much on your grandma. She's a widow. You need to come back home. We're going to get you on the right track." But the thing is, I didn't do well in school, and it's not because I'm not a smart person. I do say some dumb shit, but I'm actually very intelligent, and I don't say very highly things about myself. But I didn't do well in school because I had no interest in the topics. Like, I liked art and music and things like that. So I ended up getting put in special education classes. And back in the day, those education classes were in the back of the school. You were secluded from everybody, so you're isolated. So from 3rd grade to 9th grade, I'm in a classroom with 3 to 5 people. So now what I do is they all see it at school games is they think it's antisocial, but it's just the way that I've been since I was in 3rd grade, and it's the way that I deal with things. And so I ended up moving in with my grandmother, and then my parents had me come back, and I tried to take the GED classes. I tried to get a job. Wasn't working out for me. My dad was getting more frustrated with me because I wasn't able to find employment, because what do you need to find employment? A high school diploma, released in my state. So I ended up failing the GED multiple times because I didn't give a shit about it. Couldn't find employment. So I started rummaging through a paper. This was right when the internet started becoming bigger and more people were using it. But I started going through this creative arts paper in Atlanta, and I saw an ad for it was customer service representative with free room and board. And I thought, cool. By the time my high school class graduates, I will have a job, a place to stay, and I'll just show everybody I didn't need them. And so I took the bait. I called the number. A woman answers the phone, and she went by the name of Tiffany. Tiffany tells me that they always have openings and that I can come anytime I want. I immediately tell her everything that's going on. I'm like, I'm fighting with my parents all the time. I can't get my GED. Oh, we're going to help you with all of that. Okay, cool. I believed all of that shit. So there was a part of me thinking back that I was hesitant, but I ended up going after spending the night with somebody from my church. I ended up driving out to South Atlanta, where I met a guy that went by the name Cy, and I met him at a gas station, and I asked him, "Where's your car?" And he said it was in the shop. So guess whose car we used? Mine. He was very direct with his intentions. He was not a Romeo pimp. He was not a boyfriend. He wasn't even a significant other, but what he was somebody that I knew was going to provide me with shelter. He was going to provide me with food. He was going to provide me with the things that I needed. And he made me a lot of promises and told me he would take care of me. So I figured if I don't have anywhere to go and I don't want to be a burden on my grandma, I will just stay with him. I will never forget my first night. I went to a hotel with Tiffany, and I did not know what to do. And I remember walking down the hallway of this hotel, and I told her, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what's on the other side of that door. And she's like, if you don't take the call, then we're both going to be in trouble. So Tiffany was, looking back, Tiffany was my bottom, and she went everywhere I went. And when I went to that door, I told her that, and she's like, I will take this call for you, but if you tell Cy, then we're both going to get our ass beat. So I was like, I'm not going to say anything. So she takes the call for me, and then she's like, that's the only one I'm going to do for you. You are on your own for the rest of the night. I lost my virginity to a John. I'm 39 years old, and this shit happened to me when I was 16. And that shit does not go away. It plays in my head over and over and over again. Every single day of my life. About 6 months into being with Cy, 3 months into being with Cy, he took me to a tattoo shop and he was like, "You're one of us now." And I was tattooed on my wrist and my backside. There was explicit images uploaded on different websites of me when I was a teenager that I have no control over. They've been uploaded on probably 12 to 15 different adult websites. I went and got this tattoo done, and I felt disgusting with it, and I didn't know what to think about myself. I didn't feel like I had an identity. About 6 months into being with Cy, I decided to, I can be an asshole sometimes. Just, I decided to fight back, and he did not like me being a smartass. And so, I told him, I was like, I want to leave and I want to go home. And I kept telling him how old I was. And he kept saying that he wasn't going to go back to jail over a kid. And he repeatedly was yelling at me, and we're in the car and the other girls are in the back. And I was like, I just want to go home. Can I please just go home? And he was like, you know what, bitch, leave. And I was like, whoa, that was so easy, So I start walking in the house, and I hear somebody coming from behind, and I went to turn around and I dropped to the floor. My whole body froze. Cy takes me upstairs by my hair and tried to take my life. I thought that fighting was going to save my life, but I ended up telling him all kinds of shit that I thought he wanted to hear. So I was like, I love you. I will be loyal. I will stay true to the game. I will not fight you. I won't complain. I won't be bratty, all this stuff. And so I said all these things to him, and he was like, all right. And he kind of just eased down. It's almost like his temperature dropped down, but I went to sleep that night with his hand over my body, and I couldn't move. And I remember the next morning I told him, I was like, I'm just going to the bathroom. And he says, if you try to leave, I will put 2 in the back of your head. And I was like, I'm not going anywhere. I love you, blah, blah, blah. So I ended up leaving or walking down the stairs. I sat on the front porch and I lit a cigarette, and I saw across the street, there was a Salvation Army. I fled across the street and I asked them to use their telephone. First person I called was a family member. Didn't go to, so then I called my grandmother and I was like, please help me. And she's like, Jess, you need to call the cops. And I was like, I've never called the police before. And so she says, it's going to be okay. Call the cops and then call me back. So I called the police. The police come out, and the guy goes, what do you want me to do? And because I tried to tell the officer about it, and he's like, what do you want me to do about it? And he's like, I just got on duty. I don't want to be bothered with paperwork this early. What do you want? And I was like, you know what? Can you get my keys so I can leave? That would be amazing. And the thing is, I could have had my keys. And I mean, at that time, he had my keys because of the fight the night before, but I could have left at any time. I just didn't think I had any options. And so, yeah, he ends up fist bumping my trafficker on the front porch. The cop does. I get in my car and I go to a boyfriend's house that I was dating in high school. I left there. Then I went directly to my grandmother's house. She took my car. I told her everything, every detail. She took my car, hid it behind her house, put a tarp over it, because I felt that he was going to come after me. But I knew, looking back, that he was just going to replace me. But for years, I felt like he was going to come for me. My grandmother advocated for me for a long time. I got really involved in drugs. I have more memory of my drug use than I do of my exploitation. I was really, really bad on methamphetamine and anything that would keep me awake, because I felt the longer I was awake, the more that I couldn't get hurt while I was sleeping, which is when you're most vulnerable, right? And so I was addicted to meth. I got arrested for it. I was arrested with a guy that was twice my age, who was my boyfriend. I was auditioning to be a webcam girl. I won't name the website, but I was trying to be a webcam girl and then found out that I was pregnant with my daughter, Elizabeth. And at 4 months, she passed away, and my grandmother helped me lay her to rest. So I've been through a lot of shit, and I'm not trying to leave on a negative note at all, because I want to tell you what God does. I don't talk a lot about religion, but I had to walk through a lot of forgiveness, and I had to walk through a lot of anger that I still deal with. But I had a badass grandma, and I have a badass grandma that advocated, listened, and showed up for me. That is the biggest thing that you can do for somebody, is to advocate, show up, and listen, because people want to be heard, valued, and seen, right? So that's what she did for me. And if it wasn't for her, I would not be sitting here right now. And if it wasn't for her, there would not be an ARI. There would not be a Jessica Lamb that is healed and doing, or is healing and doing well. I don't say I'm healed because I don't think anybody's fully healed. I think we're always a work in progress, right? So I got my tattoos covered up in 2016. That was the worst experience ever. Not the worst experience ever, but it was a bad experience. And I was like, I never want to see another survivor, male, female, transgender, whatever they are. I never want to see them go through this when they're getting a tattooed cover up. So I launched a program called ARI, Atlanta Redemption Inc. And we help survivors of commercial exploitation, former gang members, self-harmers, and people that have struggled with addiction cover or remove their markings from their abuse or from whatever their situation is. We have to date have helped over 1,000 people. I've trained over 15,000 individuals. And now I work with Skull Games as a survivor hunter. And whenever there's a tattoo question, they hit me up typically. And I'm able to help identify tattoos and link them to exploitation in cases. I've worked cases in the tri-state area around Georgia. I've done a lot of work in Georgia. We work with a lot of different agencies, but let me tell you guys something. I work with a lot of nonprofits, and there are some incredible ones out there. But let me tell you guys, what I have found at Skull Games is something I have never seen. And I wish this was around when I was a kid. I wish this was around when I was in my early 20s, when I was trying to be independent and doing this. This would have probably saved my life, or at least cut out a lot of the trauma that I had dealt with. They're the real deal, you guys. I trust them. They feel like family to me. They're not paying me to be up here to say any of this shit. I'm saying it because I mean it. They're good people, and they really believe in the work that they do. They believe in us as survivors, and they don't just see us as a poor thing in the corner that can't handle their shit. They see us as empowered. They see us as thriving, and they see us as capable. And that is not something that you see often in this movement. And so I know you didn't ask me to say this, but it's just kind of coming from my heart, but I appreciate it. So, yeah, that's all I have to say. I wanted to make sure I ended that on a good note, but I'm going to pass this to Candace.
I told y'all she's a badass. Again, my name is Candace Spangler. I'm born and raised in Kansas City, Kansas. I currently live in Liberty, Missouri, which is a suburb of Kansas City, Missouri. Two totally different states, two totally different cities. So for me, I grew up in an alcoholic home. The father that I knew was a truck driver who did a lot of traveling. And so that gave my mom a lot of time to be able to go to the bars and do whatever she wanted to do. I grew up with my older sister in the house. I had an older brother who his dad was like, "You're living with me." And so then there was me for many years. So at 16, my mom, let me rewind. Sorry. So, my mom's boyfriend, Kenny, she ends up leaving him for Thomas. And so there I have dysfunction, right? My mom's always in the bar, and now there's multiple men involved. My dad had been in federal prison all of my life, so I couldn't even tell you who he was or what he looked like. I remember getting letters from him all the time and reading them, and just had this, my inner child had this hope that my daddy was going to come and get me one of these days, right? And that we was going to be a happy family. Well, it never happened. So mom left Thomas. Thomas and mom have another kid. So then it's my little brother. 16. My sister ends up leaving out of the house. She was out of there. And so there was me. So raised in bars. They did ball games. So I oftentimes was filling up the beer kegs, cups for him and running them to him. And of course, I'd start sipping then. And I knew instantly at that age, like, there was things out there that I could do that I could escape to feel what I was feeling, even at that age, 12 years old. As life goes on, my younger brother, my parents are daunting on him more so. They've considered me to be the black sheep of the family. I ended up getting in trouble I said I was 12. My mom says I was 11. Ended up stealing my uncle's car. Took Kansas City police on a 45-minute high-speed chase through Fairfax. First time ever driving. And my uncle, it was a souped-up Monte Carlo SS. He's a Harley-Davidson dude, so loud and fast, right? And he put a lot of money into this car. And here I am joyriding. I was more scared of my uncle than I was of the police. And so that's why I took off. Right? Because I was like, I got to get my uncle's car back to him. He's going to kill me. As the police is standing in the middle of the road with guns pointed at me. So that caused me to end up having court, fines, fees, which my mom is now responsible for, right? And I'm taking away from her beer money, right? And so she gives up custody of me. I'm now a warden of the state. In and out of foster homes, in and out of juvie because I'm not doing probation. And a girlfriend of mine running away, constantly running away, always. So a girlfriend of mine had taken me over to this apartment complex. And in this apartment complex, it was full of, it was a guy, he had lots of money. That's all I remember in the beginning was counting all this money. 14, 15 years old. And then you see all these drugs, cocaine everywhere. And so that's when I was introduced to cocaine and then the money. So as a child, we crave shelter, love, and financial support, right? Because we can't support ourselves. And this guy was providing that for me, right? And he wasn't asking anything in return in the beginning. As time went on, I'm snorting more cocaine. And the more cocaine I started snorting, the more in debt I became, which I didn't know I was getting in debt doing it. They were just feeding it to me. And at the end of the night, they're like, hey, you done did all this. You owe me $400 or whatever. And so I didn't know how I was going to make any money. I didn't. The guy ends up owning a club, a nightclub. And so he's like, well, we're going to go down here. And they introduced me to the nightclub. I'm in the VIP room. And that's when guys started coming in and out. I had no idea what I was doing. I had nobody to teach me what to do. I had men forcing themselves on me, whatever it was that they wanted to do. I used more cocaine, right? I had to. That's how I disassociated. The question, why don't she just leave? Well, it's really the safer choice to stay, honestly. You get so deep, so wrapped up in the life that these traffickers, like, they're not just threatening you. They're threatening your families too. They'll go I'll go kill your mom if you don't do this. And it's just all that psychological stuff that happens. It's intense. It's really intense. And you don't know it at the time, you know. I had to survive for so many years thinking that I was choosing to do this because that's how I survived. Like I was choosing to do this, but I was choosing to do it so that he wouldn't hurt my sister. I was choosing to do it so that he wouldn't go kill my family. I was choosing to do it so that I can continue to have him supply me with my drugs, right? So that I did not no longer have to feel what it was that I was feeling. So my first trafficker, he didn't, it was more like, I didn't arrange, I didn't have any like contact. I was just in the room. And when somebody came in, things happened. My I ended up leaving there about 17. I went to juvenile. I was in a juvenile detention center for almost a year. And when I got out of there, went back home to my mom's, but I still wasn't feeling like I was loved or wanted, still being called the black sheep. And so I leave again and went right back to the streets, because the one thing about the streets, they'll take you however you are. They ain't discriminating. They don't care if I've got brown eyes and black hair, right? They don't care if I'm 215 pounds. I'll be useful to them in some way. And so my second trafficker is the first one who had threw me in a 2-piece string bikini with some clear light up red platform stilettos and showed me this end of the street to that end of the street and gave me a quota and said I had so long to make the money. I was 17 years old. I was petrified. I never even knew this street. Didn't know where I was. I was in a whole other state, which was just across the river in Missouri, but it felt like miles, like hundreds of thousands of miles away. And I ended up making that night. It was the scariest night of my life. I'll never forget that night ever. And so there I was introduced to the street level, which a majority of my trafficking, I've been on the streets for over 2 decades. And so I'm 43 years old. I exited out of the life 6 years ago. And so you can do the math. These traffickers aren't sending you to school to get an education. These traffickers ain't even letting you have your IDs. So they take your IDs, they take your birth certificates, they take any kind of identity that you have. Nadia was the name that I went by on the streets. So like when she said that, I was like, whoa, I ain't heard that name in a while. And so they even take that from you, right? And you're going to be called this now, right? And so that is the facade and the person that I had to become. The families that we had, like when they was talking about when, you can't wake up and say, oh, I don't feel like making any money today, I'll pass, right? That's not an option. Because if I don't get up and make that money, and he's not going to beat me, he's going to beat her. And like Jeff said, I could take all the abuse, but when you start to hurt her, that's when it's going to break me. And they make us compete against each other, because what you want to be is the bottom, right? Because when you're the bottom, you don't have to make as much money. You can have the other girls make the money. So you got to work your way up, become COO. Most of my traffickers, I've had 4 traffickers in my life. My 4th trafficker is where I compiled most of my felonies, because he wasn't just a trafficker, he was a major drug dealer. And so he forced criminality. He forced me to not only prostitute, but to go do his drug runs for him. Oftentimes when it was bigger runs and I'd be with him, we'd get pulled over. He'd put the drugs in my lap. And so there I was. And he'd come bomb me out. Never go to court. So all the warrants, constantly in and out of prison, in and out of jail. I've been in treatments, all kind of things. And the traffickers had broke it down to me so much that that's how I identified myself, right? I wasn't educated. I didn't know. I wasn't employable. I didn't even have an ID to be able to get a job, right? I had no modes of transportation. I had nowhere to live except for what he's provided me. You can't put a hotel room down on your application, I didn't even know how to fill out an app. Honestly, if you was to put an application in front of me, I wouldn't even know how to fill it out. So, a few years, 7 years ago, I ended up meeting my husband. I did marry a buyer. But thank God, because my life today, if God had said, hey, Candace, what do you want your life to look like? All the people, places, and things, I would have sold myself short, because I would not have known what life could look like, what my life looks like today. I'm currently in the process of working with the Joseph Project to get my record expunged because all of my felonies were within my career. I've got two beautiful sons who my third trafficker had oftentimes, I was with him for the longest. I was with him for 10 years. And in that one, there was a lot of abuse. There was a lot of suicidal tendencies, to suicidal thoughts, times when I just didn't even want to live anymore. Like, I didn't even care if you went and killed my parents. Like, go kill them. Kill us all, right? It was the lowest point in my life that I had ever been. And he ended up going to prison, which I feel saved my life. He's the only one that had ever pulled guns on me and that had duct taped me, locked me in a closet for days because I was a few dollars short. It had gotten to a point with him that when I didn't even count the money anymore, right? Like the money, I counted the money that the John gave to me to make sure that it was right. But at the end of the night, I didn't count the money that I had passed to him because I wouldn't even spend, like some of the traffickers, as long as you had a receipt saying where you spent your money, you'd be okay. Like you had to get something to eat. So here's your $10 receipt from McDonald's or wherever, right? I couldn't even gas money. He had it down to the miles of gas, how long it would take for me to get here, to get it done and to get back. And if I was a minute late, the abuse was just ridiculous. All the times that I'd been in a sting operation, the police will kick in the door, coming with these they're all dressed in black with these big old assault rifles, tell me to sit on the same bed that I was just raped on. And then when I don't want to answer a question, slap handcuffs on me and send me to jail. Right. While my trafficker's in the parking lot watching all this happen. Today, my life, I was working with an organization where we was helping women get their IDs and birth certificates and things like that. I've been sober for 5 years. By the grace of God. So when my story is his glory for sure, right? Because I shouldn't be on this stage today. I honestly shouldn't. Not just by the actions that had happened around me, but because of me not wanting to even live. But today, like, it's just what I get to do here with Skull Games. One of the things being on the streets, we had went for so long without being identified. And that's one of the first things that we do here is we identify these women. I had been on the streets for so long that people just passed me by, didn't even look at me, wouldn't even look at me at all. Went 10, 11 years without even talking to my family, right? Because I was them. I've got two beautiful kids. One has been legally adopted by my aunt. The other one I have in my home with me. He's 14 years old and he's driving me nuts, right? But these last 5 years, I have to learn so many different things. I had to learn how to be a mom. I didn't know. I had no idea. My mom raised him. My mom raised him until he was 8. And when and so like it's a learning process for me with him, I don't know. There's just Skull Games has right? I have a place at home with my family and my loved ones. My relationship with my mom, I just moved her in with me 2 years ago, so that relationship with her has been mended. I love her. I forgive her. There's a lot of healing, right? There's a lot of healing. There's a lot of forgiveness, and it's never ending. And every time we hunt here at Skull Games, man, just a piece of me heals a little bit more, just a little bit more, right? The folks here are like folks I've never been around before ever in my life. Like, you be around somebody who just oozes goodness and it just makes you want to be good, right? I feel like I'm a better person just being around these people, right? So please help join the fight. That's what we're asking you to do. Walk alongside of us, right? Find your niche, what it is that you can do. Maybe some of you guys can't hunt, right? I'm not an analyst. I'm not going to portray to be an analyst. Like, I can get on and I can do the basics, right? And I can identify somebody and I can get some information, but I'm not an analyst. I'm broke. I don't have no money. So I'm not a donor, right? But maybe that's what one of you guys could be, you know, maybe in this. Hosting skull games. These things aren't free, right? Just finding your niche, whatever it is. So now that you know about trafficking, right, you cannot not know. And so if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And not doing anything is still part of the problem. It's still part of the problem. And so I just want to say thank you guys for coming out tonight and being a part of this. I hope you guys learned something. Jess and I are here for questions afterwards. I'm an open book. And I'm a crier because for 25 years, I've had to suppress my feelings because there's no crying in trafficking. Anyway, all right, I'm just rambling now. So again, thank you guys for coming out.
So it's always tough. You know, I hate to ask my friends to share stories like this because obviously it hurts, right? It's hurtful, but it's important. And who saw these two women when you came in, and what'd you think? Nothing, right? It's two beautiful, capable women. They're survivors, they're thrivers, and they're hunters. And there's hundreds of thousands of them out there. Look at these numbers, Austin. Look at these numbers. Sometimes Joe breaks those numbers down. Let's just say half. Let's just say half of those are unique ads, or even a third. So a third comes down to what? 500,000 women have been advertised for sale in Austin. There's hundreds and thousands of these stories. And these two made it. There is not a group that has ever been recorded that has higher levels of PTS, higher levels of suicide, higher levels of accidental overdose, purposeful overdose, being killed by their pimp, being killed by a John. It is the highest risk population we've ever measured. And what we've stumbled upon is this strange relationship between combat veterans and survivors of trafficking. Somehow I understand their story because the years of combat, the decade of combat that I was involved in, I understand the games and I understand how you choose the life, right? Like, I think that's one of the problems that's happening with veterans is we recognize, look, I chose to be a soldier. I chose to go to war, and there were pieces of it that I loved. What I didn't choose was to have my friends die or their arm blown off or their legs blown off. So I have to find that accommodation of the things that I chose and the things that were thrust upon me. And I don't understand how the kinship is, but there's a magic bond that we have between veterans and survivors. And that's what we try to do here with Skull Games. So I'm going to blow all the way here to the end. These are some of the tricks of the trade, but really the final word of hope is right now less than 1% of pimps, not traffickers, less than 1% of pimps are ever prosecuted. Yeah. So while those are astronomical numbers, think of the other side. What if we make it 2% and then 4% and then 8% and then 16%, and then it becomes growing? Like these ladies said, man, I hope that there are kids out there listening. These girls, how old were they when they got wrapped into this crime? Little kids. I don't know what to tell you guys. It's starting when these girls are 14, 15, 16. It's just the nature of the crime. We've got to see these kids. We've got to see these girls. We've got to see these boys. And we've got to get down on their level and just show them some mercy and show them some grace. So I'll stop there. Any questions? Yep. It's very difficult. Okay, so I'm going to show this to you at my own peril, right? Okay, because these are the obvious signs. So just like Jess knows what the brands look like in the tattoos, there's stuff that happens on social media. But this is already long gone, right? If you've got a girl who's got the or on her social media, that you're way behind the power curve. What is 3 or 4? Anybody looking at the clue? Yep. Yep, it means it's ho backwards and upside down, back to the pager days. So these are the indicators and clues that we're looking for, but the days, weeks, months, and even years before that happened, only you're going to see that as a mom. So it's super, super difficult. And what I tell people is just expect more. Expect more from a boyfriend. Expect more. And it's very, very difficult, right? I raised 2 boys. They have wonderful partners. I didn't experience that. But at best, he's just a shitty boyfriend, right? A controlling boyfriend. The biggest thing I can say is look for that isolation. Because you heard that in both of those stories. Isolation is a requirement. So if you have a daughter or a son or whatever that relationship is looking like, and they're not pouring into the things that make them, what kind of things do you like to do, Nadja? Martial arts. What else? Reading and martial arts. If I'm trying to control her, she doesn't get to read. She doesn't get to do martial arts. So you look for those boys that are isolating your loved ones and separating them from you. If I love this little girl, I'm going to double down on her martial arts. If I want to be her boyfriend, I'm going to do, again, I'm saying me, don't think me the creepy old guy. I'm a 16-year-old guy, you know what I mean? I'm a 16-year-old guy that's interested in Nadia. It's like, oh, I'll start doing martial arts because I want to be near you. You know, I want to read what you're reading. But if that guy's a manipulator, if he's a controller, if he's going to turn out to be a trafficker, he's got to get her away from martial arts. He's got to get her away from reading. You guys have anything to add to that?
So the thing with like the online thing is very important to me is teaching your kids that if you don't know them, you don't know them. Like there are guys who are getting on Roblox, who are getting on, what's that other one that the Minecraft or getting on
Discord.
All of it, yeah. Right? They get on there, right? These grown men in their 30s, in their 40s, in their 50s, they're getting online and they're making profiles as 14-year-old boys, right? And so your daughter gets on the phone or gets on there and, my parents are the worst. They won't get me the new iPhone, right? Boom. The trafficker will slide, hey, or the 14-year-old boy as a grown man, I'll get you the new iPhone, girl. Boom, she's in love all of a sudden, right? And so that's the part that we need to be teaching our kids. If you don't know them, you don't know them.
You've got to know your kid. And some of those indicators too is look for those drastic changes. You know, again, Jess talked about cutting. Is there any reason to cut other than you're trying to avoid deep, deep pain? You're cutting pain in your body because the psychological pain is heavier. If you have a child or a loved one who's cutting, something's happening. You know, if they're cutting their hair off or getting piercings and all sorts of crap, at least understand why. It could be Nadia's way of separating. I had a mohawk and orange hair when my dad wasn't happy. I wasn't being molested. It was just my way of beginning to distance myself and find my own identity. But it's one of the things we look at. Michelle talks about it. Michelle back there is our intel lead. When we find these girls, we can see the story in retrospect. We see a young, healthy girl who does martial arts, and she talks about what it is she's reading. And she's pretty, and she's put together. And then you see her become sexualized, and you see her language change, and you see the depression set in. You can see this over time. But there are people in our loved ones' lives that are witnessing it real time. We're just too busy to notice. You've got to take that time and talk to them and try to understand what's happening. It's I think so. If that's the relationship you have with your kids, you know, even with my boys, my deal with the boys was whatever you're on social media, you need to make me an account so I can hear and see what's happening, you know? Yeah. And you can't.
You're going to cut them off from the world and they're going to rebel, right? The biggest Yeah, the biggest, one of the most important. Yeah, one of the most important things I tell people, my 17-year-old son's in the back. You know where we eat dinner every single night?
The bathtub?
Damn table.
The bathtub?
No.
I've seen you guys eating dinner in the bathtub.
That was dessert.
All right.
I had Twinkies. No, every single night we're sitting at the dinner table. At the table. We're not in front of a TV. We're at the table. Because that's my time to read what the hell's going on. Something's different. I don't know what it is. But we're going to talk about it. And if we're not going to talk about it, we're going to talk about it later. So I definitely would always encourage that as well. Just, you have to know your children.
And be in their business, right? Like, you're the child, you're the parent. Parent. Seriously, parent. All up in their mix. You should be able to have access to their phone. They shouldn't have a passcode on their phone that you can't get on and push the buttons and access it. Period.
Yep.
So that's, it sounded like you brought what was going on.
I can barely hear you. I'm sorry.
You brought what was going on to your parents, and they didn't believe you, right?
Yeah.
So what would someone do? To your teacher at school as well?
It was a teacher that sent the note home, yes.
Okay. So what would someone do if you see something to make sure that that is pursued? Or so say it's a child, like one of my kids running, they bring that and we have to bring this to authorities. It was brought to the cops, the guy goes, what do you want? So the whole community failed you in that situation. Is there a resource that you would direct that to continue to follow up with that?
Here's the problem. You can't prove it. That, like, you guys, we get stuck at the problem, right? She was abused. She told someone they didn't believe her. Okay, I can't fix that. But then what happened? Nobody continued to give a shit about her as a human being. You know what I mean? That is recoverable. Sexual abuse is recoverable. Someone not believing you is recoverable. But it pushes them back behind layers and layers of like screens where she's hiding and she doesn't want to be seen. We can't prove. Again, I get calls like this all the time for skull games. This is what's happening. There's nothing I can do. Date rape. There's nothing I can do. There's no evidence. It's her word against a grown-ass man. And this happens all the time. And she's screwed almost every time. But that's not the thing we can fix. Where's the rest of the people in her life? And that's where we have to be a community. That's what you should expect from your churches and from your schools and from these groups that you're in, from these nonprofits that are reaching out into these broken homes. Yes, ma'am.
So yeah, like I didn't have a community because I had my folks and we've, like Candace said, like me and my kids live with my parents. And so that relationship is fine. But like there were youth pastors that could have stepped in. There were teachers that could have stepped in. I have older siblings that could have stepped in. Like there are multiple people that could have stepped in at any time, but there's so many people out there that are going, well, it's not affecting me, so it's not my problem. It is your problem. When there's people being affected in your life, whether it's you or not, it becomes your problem. So.
Yeah. And again, you guys, I'm being open to it because I've been doing this for 10 years. I'm 55. I got 10 more years in me and then I'm going to retire. Okay. And this is worse than ever. And we talk to folks. I spend my time in Austin, the Austin 100, the Austin Cabinet, the Austin 20. I've talked to billionaires and trillionaires in Austin. You know how many people are supporting this effort? 0. You know how difficult it is for her to raise money for Atlanta Redemption Inc.? Again, if you couldn't hear her, she runs a nonprofit that covers up these brands. A dude puts his fucking name on your arm or on your face and they get it covered up, or some of yours are turned out, I don't know which one specifically, are turned into beautiful tattoos. She's barely making it. Candace doesn't have a fucking job. I don't have a job. I'm not getting paid for this. Half of our team isn't getting paid for this. Everyone sits here and they're outraged. And what can we do? What can we do? What can we do? I don't know. You're responsible for your own family. Eat at the kitchen table. And again, you ain't gonna. I'm sorry. You ain't gonna. I've had people come in and their daughter, they want me to scare her straight. You know what I mean? I'm like, dude, you need to cancel your fucking business trip and stay home with your daughter. Oh, I can't do that. The guy drove a Rolls Royce and a Bentley and he had a Lamborghini and he couldn't stay home with his daughter. I know where his daughter is now. She's fucking dead. Because he couldn't take a minute out of his life to pour into his daughter. Our society is upside down. Austin alone, the money you guys have in Austin could solve this problem. You could solve it. She doesn't have a job. She doesn't have a job. I don't have a job. He doesn't have a job. She doesn't have a job. He doesn't have a job. And yet here I stand in front of you telling you what the hell is going on. And everybody goes home and says, wow, that was interesting. Let me turn on my bullshit rap music. Let me get preoccupied with my family again, or not family, with not my family, with my job. Okay. Again, I apologize for getting on my soapbox. I don't know what else to tell you. For 10 years, we've been hunting traffickers. For 10 years, I've been meeting women like this. And about 50% of them are dead. Because, again, they just don't make it. We've got to wake up. Austin, you guys are powerful. Texas is powerful. You guys have every law you need. There's no laws we need. There's nothing we need except the funding to get this going and people to take what we're talking about back home and see their children, see these little girls. Sorry. I don't want to end on that note. Let's end on a high note somehow. But again, I don't know what to tell you guys. I've said this. I've presented this, I don't know, 1,000 times. I'm still broke. These two come up here and share their story for free because I can't pay them.
And I share my story because I trust the people who I'm sharing it with. Right? Like, I wouldn't just go through this on a public platform without having the support that I have.
And I appreciate that. You know,
and we need more survivor leaders in this organization. And it's sad that this is what we've got. This is what we've got. Women are still out there, like, unidentified. And the thing with trafficking is the women, we don't self-identify as being trafficked victims. We don't. It's a coping mechanism. Like, I have to wake up thinking that I'm making this choice to do it. I have to. That's how I'm going to survive. It's how I'm going to eat. It's how I'm going to. And my trafficker wasn't getting my nails done. He wasn't getting my hair done. It was days when I couldn't bathe because he had clientele that liked me dirty. The dirtier I was, the more money I made him.
Again, I want to thank Candace and Jess. I mean, we've been talking for the day, the reticence and hesitation to put this out there for all the world to see. You know, these very, very personal stories. I don't know what else to do. I don't know what else to say. I do want to offer you guys, if you go to our website, I don't know where that takes you. I think that takes you to our donor page, but skullgames.io. Protect Your Family course. It's like 5 hours of discussion. It goes into much more in-depth of online course. SKGTF 2024. It's a coupon code for you guys to check that out. So please, again, share that with your community. If you want to donate to us above and beyond that, great. There's also a leadership course. I used to work with Sheepdog Response years ago when we were pretty much out of Tim Kennedy's garage. We were working out of. You were still there. You were moving stuff out of the garage. So I actually made a leadership course with Tim through SDR, and he gifted it to us. So there is, if you want to hear, more of me jabbering and just kind of the story of military stuff and leadership, help yourself to that one as well. But please spread the word on this. Protect. And one last question before we head out. Anyone, can we end on a high note somehow? Yeah.
I know this is a high note, but on the wheel of violence, one of the things was figures of authority. So
Yeah.
when I talk to my children, internet and stranger danger is like very clear to them. But as far as schools, churches, coaches, and places that are supposed to be safe places, and then there's still predators everywhere. So how do you training or talking to your kids where it's a safe place, but it's also could not be a safe place? Like how Because I think for kids, it's very clear to them stranger danger, but it's confusing when it comes to like a teacher, you know, and then every day in the news, there's just more stories about, you know, teachers preying on kids.
Men that do that stuff put themselves in that position, right? If I had my kid on a T-ball team, I'm going to be very honest with you, and there was a single man with no kid coaching T-ball, we'd be switching teams. That's just a fact. Now, I know there's a lot of good men out there that are trying to invest in children. I get that. But there's no reason for it. While I was single, I wanted to not adopt, but be a foster, right? The optics of that, I was like, I can't do this. So you have to look at it that way. There's a really good book called The Gift of Fear. And it explains like really why in your head you're putting these things together and going, man, this guy gives me the spidey senses. And what I would encourage your kids is the moment they have that spidey sense, stay away. Stay away. I don't care if it's a school teacher or what, stay away. See, my heart rate's getting abnormal now.
And so one of the good things too that of some of these more recent laws is if someone's in a position of authority and responsibility like that, they're getting harsher and harsher sentencing. So there are hard answers for this Again, it's a natural vulnerability. But when you take one step back, this is what has to happen. You guys, put these fuckers in jail for the rest of their lives. We're bending over backwards to rationalize sex offenders. We're bending over backwards to rationalize pedophiles. We're bending over backwards to rationalize sex buyers. So, you know, the best way that you can help your family is adjust these risks for rewards. These guys are getting away with it, and we're letting them. I can't do much for your kid today, but if we change the algorithm, if we change the math, we can protect kids for tomorrow. Thank you. All right.
Okay. So
Creepy guy. Speaking of pedophiles.
Yeah. You can check me up on me. Trust me, you're not going to find anything. 'Cause I'm super smart. Now, hey, we're going to wrap up now. Again, like I told you before, it's heavy material. And like I said, I promise you it's going to be rewarding. It was emotional. I watched people in the audience getting emotional. I was getting emotional in the back when I was listening to them to talk up here. But I didn't want you to have the opportunity to miss out on this. That's why we brought it to you, because like I said, I got it before. I've sat down with Jeff and I talked before, and I know how important this message is. So if we can end on a high note, I'll try and bring it by saying, hey, thanks for coming out. Thanks for looking at our flyer, coming out, watching what he has to say. And now you pay it forward by making sure that you spread that information to as many people as possible and let them know that there is an underground of people working against what we hold dear every day. And there's good people out here still trying to do good things to prevent it. So thanks to Jeff, thanks to the entire team for coming. I appreciate him coming out and doing this for you and sharing this with you. Now the work belongs to you. You have to go out and spread the word and make sure that people know just how serious this thing is. And then just work hard, be diligent to raise a generation that are watchdogs that understand, because that's how we cut them off at the heels. Like if we take away whatever they have, then they're powerless. And we have the ability to do that as parents, as good people and people who believe in our community. And I believe that's who you are. You wouldn't be here. So thank you for coming here. I'm going to sign off for everybody online. Thanks for joining us. Please watch it again. But most importantly, go check out skullgames.io. Trust me, you're going to learn something when you go there. That's not I'm not trying to fleece anybody. It's not a pitch. It's just I want to get people informed. Once I found out about this, I was on a mission to get people informed. It was an easy decision to invite you and your team here. Thanks for joining us out there in the virtual audience. We're going to go ahead and sign off. And for the rest of you, we'd love to meet you and chat. Before you go pick up the kids and stuff. The kids are having a great time in there. You hear them in there, right? But that's why we wanted to offer this to you. So thanks again from the bottom of our hearts here at Sheepdog Response. We're always here. We love our community. We love our family. And thanks for coming out tonight.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks.
Thank you, Matt.